Welcome to Chaos Divided, your weekly dose of Wholesome Hammer. If you're a fan of what we're doing and you want to follow us along on our journey, don't forget to subscribe. And if you'd like to support us directly, you can find us on patreon.com/Chaos Divided 40K. This week, we're digging into the art of Warhammer. From its
glorious art.
Yes, from its grimdark beginnings to the broad range we see today. Now, if you can imagine, there's not a lot of art-specific quotes in Warhammer. It's because it's not a very aesthetically driven setting within the setting itself. But I thought this one somewhat worked. All creations most foul I behold, the Lord of all, and knew that I was dead. By Inquisitor Brand.
Inquisitor Brand, why does that name ring a bell?
He's one of the I think he has a book series, maybe?
That sounds about right.
Or he's in a book series. I don't think he has, he's not as big as, like,
Eisenhorn?
Eisenhorn. I was going to say Eisenstein, but I was like, no, that's a ship.
Yeah, they reuse so many names constantly.
Or just names that are very close. But yeah, this week we're talking about the art of Warhammer, because I feel like, we're now getting to the point where Warhammer is over 40 years old, and the art is actually where a lot of the storytelling happens, especially in the early years. Some of the aesthetics that start off the series have carried through quite strongly, and I think really influence the way we even perceive of different elements of Warhammer. Like when I think one of the kind of the common tropes for Tau, all of their art shows them losing.
Yeah, I've noticed that. There's not a lot of art where they're actually winning or defeating the creatures that they're fighting.
Because when they're winning, they're 30 miles away shooting away with hammerheads and like manta strikes. Which doesn't make for interesting art, but that means all of the portrayals of them is them getting like their robotic behinds munched on usually.
Yeah, completely.
Yeah.
The one with the Tyranids where it's just like, this is the Tau fighting the Tyranids. Like, the Tyranids taking up like 2/3 of the picture, bro. Like, come on, this isn't looking good for them.
Like, the one I can think of where they look somewhat in a position of like strength is the Manta Strike Crisis suits bombing down. But even then, it's like they're coming in to reinforce an overrun position. Like,
well, I don't want to point this out too, but even the audio like books and dramas and stuff that I listen to, there's none about them winning. They're always losing.
Well, because if
the coolest one,
if the Imperium are witnessing a battle, it's typically because they've defeated the Tau. Like,
I know.
Actually, there's a whole battle. But I can't remember what series it's part of. But it's like the Talarn regiment against the Tau, and the Tau just like completely outclass them. Like, they just like, there's like a roving group of like hammerheads that just like basically pick their armor off over the course of like 3 months, and the guard are forced to like even more desperate. I think at one point like Space Marines come in and they still can't like catch the Tau because the Tau just keep moving.
Okay, so the Tau are actually doing some good work this time. We're like, we're winning. They'll never see artwork of this.
Right. Well, part of the issue is like, the artwork of them winning is just like 30 hammerheads shooting at, tanks in the distance.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it says a lot. Like, another example, the Tyranids. If you look at the artwork of the Tyranids, they're either devouring something, or everything around them is already turned into somewhat Tyranid-esque looking geographic proportions and stuff. So it's like, clearly they're winning, or they have already won. That's the artwork designed for those guys that you see.
But I think that, actually to talk about kind of what that actually represents, that shows the Tyranids are this like unending, unstoppable threat.
Yeah.
Same with the Necrons. The Necrons are often depicted as, arising out of a tomb world as these like legions of undead robots. And, they're effectively shown as this like unstoppable force. And I think the Tyranids are also meant to be this, like, if we think about it as
very similar
propaganda,
unstoppable
if you're
force.
trying to like scare people into like this is what you're fighting against, like it almost rings of that.
Yeah, it makes sense to show them like these are the terrifying things that we will be fighting across the galaxy, and they do that. Marines will show up and show. Actually, that is a form of artwork in the Warhammer universe. They'll actually use imagery and different moments caught in battle and show planets that have not been touched by these things yet what is out there and what is coming for them to be like, yo, maybe you should join us and not like, fight against us because there's worse things than us. Look at this.
Well, if you think of like the way the Imperium functions, it's effectively like a feudal system. So like planetary governors need to have an incentive to maintain coherency with the Imperium, and fear is a big motivator.
Yeah, fear is a huge motivator.
You don't pay your tithes, maybe the Space Marines don't save you.
Yeah, very true. And that is the case. There are some times where when tithes are not given, they'll just leave them out there. They won't send any help. They're just like, all right, well, there's enough worlds. We don't have to worry about if a couple of them fall. We'll just go back and get them later.
Well, and when you think of like, that Tyranid artwork of just like, a swarm piling into a hive city. And just devouring everything in sight. Like, that
one of my
is
favorites.
A terrifying idea.
One of my favorite art pieces from the Tyranid book, I believe it's this edition or the edition before that. It shows the progression of the Tyranid's onslaught on the planet in these little pictures of the spore mines coming down, the first wave of Tyranids, the larger biomorphs, and then the planet is starting to change and the spires are growing and you see less and less conflict and more just Tyranids looking like they're hunting what's left of the population, and then suddenly you see the tubes coming down and the last picture is this barren rock of nothing left. Just the phases they go through is like, wow, it's complete horror.
Well, I think the terrifying thing is they also I think the Tyranids leave seeds of life so it'll regrow.
Yeah, I have heard that. There's some of them that will actually not all of them, but I know there are some fleets that will actually do something to re-nutrient the soil or something to allow stuff to grow. Because they are, I'm pretty sure they're starting to get some smarter that their food source eventually will run out.
Well, I mean, if you think of the Tyranids as a somewhat sentient, predator, you don't leave yourself no future food.
Exactly. And seeing as how this predator is psychically connected to all other creatures, whenever it eats something and it learns, it's getting smarter the more intelligent creatures it eats in this galaxy.
But I think the art definitely conveys that almost primal horror of being consumed. And I think honestly, even as people, when you think of that's kind of one of the worst ways to go is to be eaten. And I think the art really sells that story, that otherness. You are not fighting something with a reason and logic. You are fighting something that is hungry and you are food.
Exactly. Here's a good contrast in some of the artwork that I've noticed that I really like too, and I'll make a depiction of the Ultramarines versus the Orcs. So the Ultramarines, a lot of the artwork in the Ultramarines is honorable combat in the midst of the battle, ripping apart the enemy, the last stand against all odds on top of a hill with the flag being raised, or the champion standing up against this big bad monster. It's really like epic moments, right? It defines what the Ultramarines are. Honor-bound warriors who will stand in the face of absolute danger and death to fight for humanity. And the artwork really depicts that. Then you look at the Orcs artwork. They're not in the middle of fighting at big bad enemies. They're just shooting off into the distance, or driving cars around, or flying, or throwing bombs, or big explosions, or firing guns. Every bit of artwork just shows the Orcs having a good freaking time.
Now, see, when I think of Ultramarines, I actually think of that portrait of Marnius Kelgar on the throne with the giant Ultramar banners in behind him, and he's sitting with his power fists clutching the arms of the throne. And he's just sitting there,
and then is this when he's out, or when they're giving him his laurels and stuff?
No, are they putting laurels on him? I think yeah.
Yeah,
I think there's a few
yeah.
like oh, what are they called? The
Like,
babies.
yeah, the babies, the cherubs are there,
The
and that's when
cherubs
he's
putting
bestowed the laurel by somebody. I forget who gave it to him.
but yeah, that to my mind is like that ultramarine, almost like arrogance.
Yeah. Although, if you zoom in on that and look at his face, he's not happy.
No, it's like the
He's
dourest like
yeah.
scowl.
He's like, I hate every single thing about what is happening right now, and I have to deal with it.
But the ultramarines are bound to like, because if you think of even like the depictions of like the space wolves, like they're always out just like bombing around having a good time. Like the ultramarines are always like doing something. They are
Yeah, they're
accomplishing
doing.
something.
Yeah, they're completing a mission. They're fulfilling a duty. They're doing something.
Oh, some of my favorite talking about orcs, like the speed freaks, like four orcs
Yes.
hanging onto some kind of like
One
drag
just like
racing with
flying off the
one,
back
yeah,
by
like a
one
grot
hand.
like hanging as a banner, and like they're all
Dude's
shooting
leaning.
into the air.
He's leaning out the window driving with goggles on because his windshield's so destroyed he can't see, and with his tongue hanging out. It's like, that's just, the artwork says they're having the time of their life. They're having a grand old time doing what they're doing.
But even from like the beginning, that's how they're depicted, and I
Yeah,
think
they
that's like
always have been.
because
I
think
love the org. Sorry.
oh, I was just gonna say, I think one of the big things is like the art really carries the narrative before Black Library existed, before the models even told much of a story. I mean, if you go back to like first gen Warhammer miniatures, like they were the best they could be, but they were not great.
No, they were like, they were passable. For the time, it was good.
But it was
For
really
the
like,
time they're made.
yeah, and it was really the art that was kind of telling you the story and presenting that like
Yeah.
visual narrative of like, okay, the orcs are silly.
Yeah.
Like
Even
fundamentally they're
back then,
silly.
back then, like, they kind of made everything silly, but the orcs just stayed on that path. It's like everything else in the lore became a little more serious. The orcs leaned into that heavy. It's like, we're gonna lean into the silly bullshit as much as possible, and it works for them.
And I think the art really like, you look at orc art and you smile, and you also know it's orc art.
Yeah.
Because even if you like, if it's orcs and some other faction, you can tell if it's orc art versus the other factions based on what the orcs are doing.
Yeah, 110%. You can tell whose perspective it is by what's going on. If there's a bunch of orcs being killed and murdered and ripped apart, then obviously it's from the Space Marines' point of view. But if there's a bunch of orcs looking like they're having a great time, there's a couple of Space Marines in the background maybe dying, that's definitely an orc perspective. Like, we're having a damn blast because this war is like a party.
If there's an orc using a guardsman arm that is holding a lighter, lighting his cigar, that's for orcs. That is the orcs expressing themselves.
That is orcs express themselves entirely. They're so freaking, man. If I wasn't a Chaos player, I'd be an orc player. They're so great.
Oh, orcs are so tempting. They're always so tempting.
It's like this sultry little voice that always speaks to you, going, "Oi, you want to paint some green boys, don't you?
I think it's on
you want to.
That makes
you want to roll some dice and have them charge across the battlefield, don't you?" It's just always right there. It's like, I could play orcs. I could do it. I would love them. They'd be wonderful. But it's a horde, and I can't do that. But they're so nice.
Oh, if you can commit to it, because I would want to play like Green Tide. I would want to like
I would
play
too. 100%. I would play Green Tide. I'm not about the big mechs with the orcs. I'd want to have this army of green. Just it feels so good. Sorry, that sounds awesome.
Actually, you know what? That is a bit of an endorsement for the old world, because that makes it easier to run a giant horde of orcs. But
yeah, well, I got a buddy. I have a buddy of mine that still has a bunch of old world stuff, and I'll be like, hey, wanna play?
Old world's a lot of fun. Yeah, I mean, when we actually, and honestly, to talk about maybe Warhammer Fantasy for a bit, that Grimdark style really comes out of Warhammer Fantasy, like Warhammer Fantasy battles, like the kind of the first attempt by Games Workshop to make, a war game out of their miniatures, was somewhat rooted in like, what if Dungeons and Dragons, which is what they had originally made miniatures for,
Yep,
was
that is very
dark.
true.
Like Dungeons and
Yeah,
Dragons
like
was very much rooted in like that Tolkien-esque high fantasy, elves and wizards and mystical dragons, and like the heroes win at the end of the day. And Warhammer was kind of
yeah,
like,
exactly.
what if nobody was good?
Yeah, what if we're all the good guy in our own eyes?
Yeah.
Just that subtle, like,
because like,
but it's true that it changes. It's a dramatic change. Like, I've never seen another game out there that's like that. Every other lore has depicted a good and a bad. It's one of the few times that this grimdark aspect has shown that it's horrible. There is no light. There is no goodness. Every single person is a bad guy who thinks they're a good guy doing the right thing. And there's so many people getting injured in the process of everybody else's goals. So when you really look at it, it's a dark universe. It's truly dark, which is why I kind of like to bring some of that into D&D. I like bringing the grim dark into D&D quite a bit.
Well, and even some of the early art that wasn't, it wasn't necessarily as color filled, because it was coming out of like magazines and newsletters, and Games Workshop did not have the resources when they started off. A lot of it was even just like sketches, but it was very like the design of it was meant to convey like a roughness and a darkness. And like, from the immediate, looking through, say, an army book or a rule book, you knew this is not the same as Gary Gygax's view of fantasy. And when they created Rogue Trader and what eventually became 40K, like, it was angry, it was aggressive, like it was that 80s like hard rock aesthetic.
The first image you see is a bunch of space marines on top of a hill with a dreadnought firing into distance with flags raised, waving around, and a dude with a giant fist raised in the air going, oh! They went to a really hardcore place. Like, you look at that, it's like, imagine doing a D&D quest in the middle of that shit.
Yeah, no, and it was really meant to like convey the violence and the aggression of it, which I think, compared to even some of the other things at the time, was very different. And I truly believe like it was the art that sold it, because I mean, if you look at the early lore, it was pretty skimpy,
It was more like everything, like I said, everything kind of had a bit of a tiny bit of a comical feel to it. From Rabute Gilliman sitting in a chair with this weird-looking armor and a panther beside him, to the orcs, to the space marines armor and their weapons that look kind of like chrome shotguns. I feel like it was kind of meant to be gimmicky in the beginning.
Yeah, I mean, it was coming out of it was firmly in the 80s. Like, it was that like whole kind of counterculture, like end of the Cold War.
I mean, even aesthetic. Necrons were just a metal skeleton.
I mean, they basically still are.
Yeah. Well, they've gotten creepier. Like, they went from just like literally you take a skeleton painted silver to these weird, creepy, hunched over robotic things that
I don't know. Flayed ones have always been creepy, and that's a from the beginning Necron model.
For me, it was the Wraiths. The Wraiths have always been creepy, and when they made the new Wraith, I was like, okay, that's not that creepy. Then they brought those new things out, and I'm like, okay, it's creepy again. It's creepy again. I don't like that. I don't like a thing with a snake body and then big, like, scissor hands at the end. I'm not for that at all.
Too many eyes, too.
Oh, yeah.
It's true. I mean, it actually has like Demon Engine vibes.
Yeah, well, there's the ones that have, it's like the Necron torso with the claws and then the big blade hands, but they have a snake-like body. I don't know what it is, but that just... What does that guy say? brother. What's that? Oh, what's that, brother? It's creepy. The whole snake thing is creepy. Like, even in D&D, when I look at a Medusa, it's like, okay, it's got 2 legs. Put a snake body on it, I'm immediately disturbed by that.
Are you saying you're afraid of our Lord and Savior, Fulgrim?
No, that's the thing. I'm cool with Fulgrim. You mean the Fulgrim snake body? Yeah, Fulgrim snake body kind of unsettles me a little bit.
That is very interesting because I do not
Yeah,
have that feeling at all. That like does not bother me at all.
it's a strange thing. It's always like I love snakes. Sorry, I heard some meowing and Garrow's right beside me, so I assume the neighbor's cat's up. Um, yeah. So when I look at a snake or other types of creatures that have snake-esque things, it's like, okay, that's cool. It's all right. I'm down with it. I actually like them. But there's something about a humanoid body attached to a snake body that is just unsettling. I think
Yeah,
it's
I had
because
that with
like
spiders.
it's how it moves. Like the human body moves almost like it's kind of like walking normally, but the bottom is slithering behind it. It's just like because it can just go da 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 da,
Yeah.
like really quick.
No,
It's
and
a
I think
creature that Sorry, go
imagine
ahead.
if Emperor's Children get like some kind of snake-bodied Terminator.
Oh gosh, I will love them, and as I'm playing with them, I'll go, okay, I'm gonna move my Terminators. What was that? Nothing.
um I mean, yeah, but that's the power of like the what the visual can like convey to you though. Like if you're imagining
Yeah.
like, okay, how does this actually like work? Um,
Well, the
I
snake
mean,
body.
snake body Fulgrim has been around for a long time, and even like the snake body Slanesh.
Oh, I know. And then even like in fantasy, they've had a couple of those snake style creatures come out for the Dark Elves. Yeah, the Dark Elves. Yeah,
They have like
Daughters of
yeah the
Cain.
dinosaurs or whatever.
Well, there's the Daughters of Cain have the snake ladies, and then they have that
Mm.
other Medusa snake lady looking. And then there's the her himself, or the fantasy version of Fulgrim, pretty much.
Sigvald.
No, not Sigvald. That chick. What's
Oh,
her name? Mirith, Marathi. That's it, Marathi.
mm.
Yeah, she has that large snake form. Like that was the one that made me think that Fulgrim was coming. When I first saw those images, I was
Oh.
like, "That's Fulgrim. That's Fulgrim. That's snake body. It's Fulgrim. Has to be Fulgrim. Wasn't Fulgrim. That's Fulgrim. That's Fulgrim. It is Fulgrim for 30K. You bastards. You evil bastards."
Yeah, that's yeah. But no, looking at kind of how that art evolves over time, like looking at even the very beginning, like you can still see um you know images of that. Like I think of some of the early like Chaos Space Marine images, like that Black Legionary running head first, looks like his face is contorted in rage. Like I feel like that's such a
Yeah.
quintessential like Chaos Space Marines look. I think he even has horns. That like I
Yeah.
think that's
Well,
from
there
like
was
the
one in.
second or third edition codex, and it
They paid
still
homage to
has
that.
power today. Yeah.
They paid homage to that in the. I think it was the 7th or 8th edition Chaos Marine Codex. No, it was definitely the 6th edition or 7th edition. There was an image of a chosen, and you never had chosen models, but he was running full tilt with a sword in a boulder towards a bunch of guardsmen with a pair of horns down, and the face mask was twisted to look like a demon, and it looked very much like that image you're talking about, and I feel like it paid homage to that. It was so nice, and then we had to wait like 10 more years to get the models.
That is the price of chaos.
I
Um,
know.
no, and even the like early orc stuff carrying through, and early Space Marines very much was just Ultramarines. Um,
Yeah. Yeah, it was.
even a
You
lot of the
didn't.
like early like chapter armor art and things like that. A lot of it is kind of very regimented. Um, but even looking through and like uh, older codexes and things like the art was definitely front and center, and even like the way the models were presented. Like if you think like some of this stuff predates meaningfully the internet, like pre-YouTube,
Yeah.
even pre-forums. A white dwarf was like one of the only ways to kind of get access
Keep up with
to
what was
how
going
other
on with
people
what
were
was happening.
hunting.
I remember that. Though without any of that stuff, like getting a white dwarf and flipping through to see what people were making and getting ideas was like that was gold.
Mm.
Yeah.
But so much of that was rooted, like I think even to today, you know, I feel it more with the older factions. But why so many of us kind of get hung up on like the Space Marine legions, both Chaos and Loyalist, and some of those like quintessential orc color schemes, and even just orc styling, and even Tyranids to some extent. Like there's kind of a like flow to what those look like, and I think so much of that comes from that like early art that then got built on and built on and built on, that it really kind of like hangs in our mind as like, okay, this looks cool. Like when I think of like there's a portrait of Fulgrim where he's got like his like purple eyes and he's like in full Phoenix gear and he's got his arm out, and it is very much like Fulgrim the diplomat. It's like Fulgrim at his best. And to then contrast that against the art of him later on, like more than the story itself, the art shows the fall. It shows
it does.
He gets. And like you can look at those two images and be like, oh, that's the same guy. Oh, something bad happens to him.
Yeah, it's like, oh, what happened? Oh, he goes from something so regal to something so awful. What happened?
Well, and even like the early portraits of Magnus, like before he falls, like they convey this like scholarly, erudite, knowledgeable Primarch, and then like him as a demon Primarch, and like there's no humanity left. Like it's those like the subtleness to the face. Angron, the depictions of Angron pre fall to chaos show that there is humanity to him.
Little tiny bit. There's like it barely exists there, but it's there.
Yeah.
It fights behind all that pain, but then when you change, there's nothing left. It's like Karn says. Oh no, wait, was it Karn that? I think it was Karn. I don't think it was Karn or Angron said himself. Your brother was gone. He was never here. He died on Nuceria. The only thing that was left is the murderer.
I think that was Karn to Horus or Lord.
It may have been Angron to Rabute.
I feel like Karn also talks about that to someone else though, because at one point
he does, yeah. Karn.
I think at one point Horus is like, why can't Angron just like? I think it's after Istvan. Horus is like filled with rage, and he's just like, why can't my brother like do what he's supposed to do? And Karn's just like, no, he never left that planet. Like he's gone.
Yeah, he's gone. The nails are in control of him, just like the rest of us. And and I think after the change, I think one of the comments he says to, I don't forget who it is to, but he does say, my father's name is Angron, and that's all he has left. We have Lorgar to thank for that. And one day, we will.
Oh, it's so interesting how many people hate Lorgar.
I love it.
Actually, even his portraits, though. Like, have you ever seen any of the portraits of him with, like, the Colchizian written all over his body?
Oh, yeah. He looks like a...
He looks infinitely slappable.
Yeah, he looks like a slimy snake in the grass. Like, I know everything, you know nothing. I know all the secrets. You can see it in his face. You just want to hit him. Several slaps back and forth.
No, it's true, and like, we were talking about this beforehand. Like, Jagatai is just as well read as Lorgar is, and
yes, he is.
Gulliman is just as well read as Lorgar is. Like, the Lion is a massive keeper of information, and yet Lorgar has to be like, "Yeah, but I know things you don't know," and like it's those like
Yes.
images that just like push that. Because like factually, like if you read through the books, you're like, okay, Lorgar knows some things, but when you
Yeah.
see him depicted and like his almost gaunt features, because he's just been like reading so much and he couldn't even be bothered to eat because he's
Yeah,
just
exactly.
such a good scholar.
Oh, come here, you.
Like
Was that
what a wiener.
Oh, he is an absolute wiener. Hearing him whine and complain about how his words have been changed to what the Imperial Creed is, and now he has to destroy it. It's like, you won, and you're still whining.
Right? Actually, you know what's probably one of the biggest changes? I noticed this with the Arcs of Omen and the images of Abaddon. I
Yeah.
feel like Abaddon used to be depicted as a loser. He was
Yeah.
like this angry, bitter um, character. And actually, I
But
noticed it in the ninth edition Chaos Space. There's an image of him like holding a Cadia in like the talons of
in
Horus
the
and just
claw and
squeezing.
crushing it. Yeah.
Yeah, and I was like, "Oh, this is and it was like an immediate like, oh, Abaddon is changing." And then the Arcs of Omen came out, and we were like, "Oh, yes, Abaddon is changing." Because
Yeah.
then we started getting
Abaddon's a
more of the stoic thinker Abaddon, and more of him like looking off into the distance because he has so many plans within plans.
Yeah, they revealed him for what he truly was, and I still love that internet argument about how he shouldn't be that way. He was a loser. No, GW wrote a book a long time ago in the beginning, like in the first few editions, about what Abaddon was really doing in his side
Yeah.
quests to set everything up. Like literally, Abaddon was playing the game of look over here, don't look over here the entire time, the whole freaking time.
When he's portrayed early on as just this like bitter, angry old man. And then we actually see that he was in control the whole time, which I think is such a cool evolution for him.
Yes.
But yeah,
It does make sense because if you think about it, the first while, maybe it's because it's well, like you said, Laura, it's the depiction of the Imperium. So, what would the Imperium say about those who knew about Abaddon? He's a loser. He's a fool. He's a pompous ass. He can't defeat anything. The Imperium will protect you. And then all of a sudden, it's like, no, he's been playing you all for fools the entire time. And now he can do whatever he wants, whenever he wants. And there's nothing any of you can do about it.
he literally controls half of the Imperium now. Like,
Yeah. Half of the galaxy belongs to him, and there's rips and tears everywhere where he can just come out wherever he pleases.
yeah. So no, it's interesting to see that evolution because he really like he's depicted as just angry and bitter and filled with rage. Like he some of the early stuff, like I can think of like early on, like he almost has kind of like a Karn-esque, just like he's angry. Like
Yeah,
he's
he's
just
mad all
depicted
the
as
time.
mad. And I really like to see him kind of getting that like yeah, it's the look off to the far distance because that's often how like Gulliman is portrayed because he's a thinker and a strategist.
Yeah,
Gulliman's always looking off to the horizon, and I feel like
and
Abaddon now has that same like he's like the counterpoint to that.
that's what he was meant to be. The Black Legion is supposed to be the direct counter and like shadow to the Ultramarines. So yeah, Abaddon should very much represent Rabute, especially since Abaddon has probably read every single book that Rabute ever wrote.
It's true because
Yeah, a lot of a lot of them did. I know that Abaddon does get his followers to read the Codex Astartes and everything else and understand it because he knows proper warfare. If we're gonna fight them, we should know exactly what they're capable of so we can tear them apart.
I mean, realistically, Abaddon has done more campaigning and fighting than Gulliman ever will.
Yeah, yeah, he has. He's been doing it for a long time.
Like when he's talking about being a veteran of the Long War, like Abaddon, like Horus was the first Primarch found. Like Abaddon has been. Is Abaddon Terran born? Or is he from?
No, he is Chthonian. He is 100% Chthonian.
Yeah, so he's not the oldest, but he's still been at it a very long time.
Yeah, like he was one of the first, and he's one of the few that really changed to look like Horus. Like, and then in the first book, it even says that a lot of people thought that he was an actual clone of Horus for how close he looked to the Primarch.
Mm. Yeah, which, as we've also gotten more art about Horus, kind of, you can see that mirroring. That was one of the, honestly, the one of the sadder changes, or the early lore around Horus and the Emperor's fight was actually that a guardsman killed Horus.
I remember that lore, yeah.
Yeah, so there used to be I think there was one painting they did, and there was a guardsman like in the throne room with them of the vengeful spirit.
And then after that, eventually it changed to several different like depictions of it till like, do we even know now what actually happened? Because is the end and the death out?
Yeah, the end and the death is out. I think what happens? Basically the Chaos Gods like abandon him at the last moment, and the Emperor like is able to just absolutely rip his soul out.
So nobody runs out to save the Emperor?
No, it's like he's mortally wounded, and it's like when I think it's something like when Horus mortally wounds the Emperor, the Chaos Gods like bounce at that exact moment.
Oh.
Yeah.
So nobody was there.
Well, Sanguinius' dead body is there.
Well, that's fair. But I know that like what was it? Some people said it was an Imperial Guardsman. Some people said it was Alanus Pius. Others said it was a lone Blood Angel who got onto the deck. Others said it was a Blood Angel in Terminator armor. But there's many depictions to say that somebody went into the throne room to stand in front of Horus and stop him from killing the Emperor, and then he just basically flayed them alive, and that's what made the Emperor go, nope, I've had enough. Mind bullet. At least that's what has been said.
I think they just made it between the two of them now.
Oh, that's awful. Really?
Yeah, I think there's this. Yeah, I haven't read The End and the Death, so I don't know exactly like how they portray it, but I'm pretty sure it's just between the two of them now.
Well, I'm gonna go find out.
But I always love the guard, just like a little Lasga, just like pew pew.
Yeah, I like the idea of the guardsman going, in the name of the Emperor, and then Horus going, slice.
But yeah, no, honestly, like that, the art that has evolved over time with like that particular scene is also interesting to just sort of see how like with better resources how like that depiction has evolved. Because I mean, even like
the battle between the two of them,
the vengeful spirit as a concept was not super fleshed out in early editions.
And then you actually get to see the ship itself. It's like, wow.
Actually, honestly, that has been one of the cooler. And what's it called? The one that's actually the not Blackstone Fortress, the one that's actually the ship game.
Battlefleet Gothica.
Yeah, that got us all the cool like ship artwork.
Yeah, seeing the different types they have, like the frigates, the battle barges. I can't remember some of the other types they had. Cruisers, escorts. Oh my god, there's some of them that are really nice.
Well, even just you think of the way like humanity does war, and the fact that their ships have ramming prows is like so stupid. It's
like, we design our ships so we can run them directly into yours.
Right? You're like,
why do you do that? Well, we're not gonna go down without a fight, so we might as well ram the ship into somebody.
Can you imagine the first like Eldar fleet that like runs into like one of the like Great Crusade expeditionary fleets, and they're like, hey, the humans aren't slowing down. What do we do? And they're like, well, evasive maneuvers. They're just chasing us. What do we do? And you're like, why? And they appear to have ramming prows, and they're like, what nonsense is this?
Why
we're faster than them?
Yeah, exactly. Why do they have a ramming prow at the front of their ship?
Right?
Wouldn't it make some more sense to have cannons? They have those too, my lord. What in the fuck?
Why? But why are they all on the side if their whole point is they're gonna chase you?
Hey, at least they weren't being chased by the Conqueror. That thing had those spears it would fire and then crank you in like a fish.
That was hilarious. That was so World Eaters.
I love that thing.
I wish there was like a Loyalist Legion that was whale themed or something, so the World Eaters could go like, "There she blows," and just like harpoon them. Yeah.
Oh my god, that would be wonderful. I would love that.
There were so many, yeah. But and honestly, like the ship art is some of the best, especially coming out of the Horse Heresy, because they were like unlimited resource. Like the Emperor's just like golden ship. Like
Yeah,
how
I remember
obnoxious
that.
is that?
It's like, but bro, is this necessary? Like it.
And you're like, why would you make a ship out of gold? And you're like, no, it's Auramite. You see, it's super strong gold. And you're like, really?
What's your armor made of? Auramite. Mm-hmm. It helps me focus my psychic powers. Malcador looks at you, just goes,
no. And then everyone looks at Fulgrim being like, why are you so prideful?
Yeah, exactly. Oh my goodness.
No, but yeah, the way the legions are depicted is like almost like a direct representation of how their ships are, and I think like the whole design flow. Actually, I was watching a video recently that was talking about like the design of like the Emperor's children versus like their lore, and it was someone talking to someone who like was like a designer but didn't necessarily know Warhammer lore, and they were just like being like, oh, this is what this is conveying and everything, and like it's interesting to see how clear like a visual cue a lot of this art does. Like, you know, when we're talking about like the Ultramarines, like you look at the Ultramarines and you're like, yeah, these are the boring soldier guys, whereas like if you look at like the White Scars, you're like, oh, these are the fast boys.
Yeah,
and like you look at the Space Wolves and you're like, oh, these are the Vikings.
Yeah, they have a good. These guys know how to have a good time.
Like even, you know, if you think of like, I know some of the box art has been changed a lot, but like the Space Wolf like boxes for models, like it's like Fenris in the background, like
yeah,
you look at that and you're like,
cold
Space Vikings.
Wolves. Yeah, Space Vikings. Side note, another ship that I love, orc ships. It's just a fucking rock.
Yeah,
it's rock that hurls through space, hits a planet, and then things pile out of it. It's like a set. It's like a freaking. It's like a freaking cartoon skit.
Well, I mean, what is not the orciest thing to do to just like find a giant meteor and strap rockets to the side of it?
Yeah, and fill it with orcs and just fire it off and see where it goes.
You know, those can't go faster than light, so when they like take one from one system to another, it actually just like takes centuries.
Oh yeah. It takes a long ass time.
Yeah, and they don't care. They're just
they're essentially immortal, aren't they? As long as they keep fighting, like orcs are pretty much immortal.
I think so.
But that's
they just keep regrowing anyways. So.
But now they have technology to get across faster, thanks to the whole War of the Beast. They have that teleportation technology.
No, I know they do have some, but I don't think it works on rocks. I think like if they're too big, they actually have to like take them system to system, which is just like so funny. Because they'll like find one in a system, because they have proper ships that can go faster than light. They'll find a meteor, like say in between two systems, strap rockets onto it, send it towards an inhabited planet. It arrives like 200 years later. And then it's a meteor, so they have to crash the thing, so it's not reusable. All in the name of WoW. Anyone who says orcs are stupid does not understand the time frame that they exist within. They are both completely in the moment and massive long-term thinkers, and there is nothing in between those 2 points in time. They are either planning for centuries ahead or literally not beyond the second they're in.
Yeah. How long is it gonna take him to get there, boss? Sometime. That's
Right.
it.
Because I mean, they wouldn't build the mechs if they didn't plan ahead. They wouldn't
No,
build
yeah.
like a Stompa takes resources. Like they would just use
Well,
limited
yeah.
stuff if they only thought in the moment. Orcs are complicated beasts.
Well, they are very complicated, especially when they
can
grow
hang
in mass.
multitudes.
Yeah, and the more they get smarter.
Yeah. I mean, I guess to expand our conversation, I feel like we have to talk about the Eldar. But I kind of want to start by talking about the Dark Eldar. Drukhari, if you're a more recent Warhammer fan.
Oh, that artwork's like Frankenstein-esque.
Even like the depictions of Gamora, like the spindly spine, like it almost looks like a spider web of a city.
The whole place looks like the place they live looks like it would hurt you. Literally, well, actually, no, that makes sense because like they're all about pain. The city they live in literally represents pain when you look at it. Sharp, angular points and spikes everywhere. Yeah,
no,
everything about them represents pain.
Like when you see like a craft world, you're like, oh, that seems like a big spaceship. I'm sure there's nothing weird going on there, but when you see any Dark Eldar anything, you're like, something weird is going on.
Yeah, there's too many sharp, pointy things on that.
But even like beyond like Chaos, like Chaos is a lot of sharp, pointy things. But like Dark Eldar,
it's different.
Like, oh yeah, it's the delicacy of it.
Yeah, there's a sleekness to it. There's like, 100 different shades of black and blades upon blades and like just a flow to it.
I mean, think about like, when we think of like aliens invading, we think like, oh, it'd be really scary that have advanced technology. How scared would you be if aliens showed up and then just whipped out daggers? Like, what does that say about them? What does that say about their confidence?
Yeah, that's a fucking statement right there. It's like, oh no, oh no,
right?
No. Why are they running at us with knives?
When you show up to a gunfight with daggers, like not even swords, not shields, not swords, just daggers.
And the occasional dude with a weird weapon, like the punch gauntlets, those weird, flimsy, whippy swords, or God forbid, you just go, what's that thing? I was.
Yeah. Well, I mean, the Dark Eldar also use like monofilament wires, which are horrifying, but
I'm still terrified about the description of that weapon when you told that to me. That is just. What a way to die.
Being blended?
Yes. For those out there that don't understand, the Eldar have this device that they can stick you with, and it fires a wire inside of your body that basically wiggles around like a wavely inflatable arm flailing tube man inside of you as a razor sharp wire, turns you into a smoothie, and then pulls out and it keeps moving. This all happens within a couple of seconds, so you have time to feel this.
Well, I mean, Warhammer also has the assassins, the Imperial assassins have them. They're monomolecular blades. So it's literally a knife that is a molecule thick. So it isn't actually impeded by anything.
Yeah, it just cuts.
You would cut
the molecule.
And if you've seen like the cartoon where the two parts of the body slide apart, like it does that. Yeah, because I think it has an energy field, so it can like maintain its like strength.
I'm just imagining a poor guardsman seeing his buddy get stuck by an Eldar, jumps away, and he's like, Phil, you okay? Phil turns around, it's just like blood streaming everywhere, he falls down.
Well, I mean, that's what the shurikens are, I think. They're also monomolecular thick. So you don't even necessarily see like, you would see like shurikens sticking out of the tree behind you, and there'd just be holes, and like you'd bleed out of them. And they'd be like, so like they just would go through you.
Yeah, there's a reason why the Space Marine's armor blocks those things and Guardsman doesn't. There's just like woven molecular plasteel. Guardsman wearing a t-shirt, bro.
I
They're
mean,
not doing good.
your
For
average guardsman
real
wears better body
like,
armor than anyone in modern times wears. It's
I
just,
mean, to a point,
yeah,
but
it just
in
doesn't
the
compare
equivalence
to
of
what
like,
they're going up
yeah,
against.
the level of weapons, because even their las guns are like in the spectrum of like what we would be used to. A las gun that a guardsman would hold would actually be pretty scary. It's a terrifying weapon. It's like shoots a hole through a wall, burns a hole through a man. It's pretty scary. And then you compare it to some of the other horrifying things that are out there, and it's just like this. Like, it's like the game says, it's a fucking flashlight.
Yeah, I mean, a single guardsman with enough power cells could probably overpower hundreds, if not thousands, of modern soldiers, just in the sense of
Mm-hmm.
like they have a gun that they could just keep shooting, and
Yeah,
you
rapid
know,
fire, and it passes through multiple people.
yeah, like it's not a Star Wars blaster. It doesn't hit something and explode. It's a real laser. It goes through,
Yeah, it just keeps going.
and without anything to stop it, yeah, there. It's got a lot of energy. So yeah, well, it's the same as like one Space Marine with a bolter probably like takes over Earth.
Yeah, yeah, that's a scary weapon.
Well, a bolter would
It-
shoot through a tank, so
Well, he would just use the bolter and then commandeer every one of our weapons and just slag us with their own weapons.
be like a never-ending game of like bolt gun, just one space
Yeah.
Marine just picking up guns and bullets the whole time.
It would, or he would resort to the knife, and then it's just gonna get real weird.
That's they don't have knives. It's a short blade. It's a gladiator. It's like
To us,
it's a
it's
short
a sword. It's a freaking sword to us.
Oh yeah.
Human
To
holds
them,
that they're holding a great sword in their hand. Space Marine,
Yeah.
a knife. That's a knife.
it's more so than them not stopping is the problem. It's they're like, okay, it's been 3 months. Has he slept yet? And you're like,
Mm-mm.
no.
Is he eating?
hasn't.
No. He just keeps going.
they just keep trying to like keep him busy. They just like lead him off into random directions. And they're like, is he tired yet? We're like, no.
No, he's not.
Has he stopped to
He
eat?
just took Paris. What? He
Well,
took
only
Paris.
grains.
Yes, he's swimming across the ocean. The hell you mean he's swimming across the ocean? It's been 6 days. He hasn't taken a break. He's just doing like the butterfly stroke across the Atlantic.
It's more like when you see like dolphins jumping in it, it's like he hits the water, his armor starts him to sink, then he just has to launch himself back out of the water. So he's just like dolphin skipping in and out of the ocean.
Oh my word! Why?
He actually just like goes to Russia, throws a grappling hook, and pulls North America towards him.
Yeah. They would do that. The Space Marines are nuts, man. Just nuts.
This is what it's
You
one of
have
the
to
struggles
throw-
of
What did Rabute Gilliman always said something? He said, if you want to take a city, send a Marine. To take a planet, send a company. To what was it? Oh, what was the last one? To destroy a society, send a legion.
yeah.
Yeah, so one guy, a city, an entire planet, 5 Marines. That's it.
Yeah.
That's so scary. So friggin' scary.
Yeah. No, there used to be it was called the Movie Marine list.
Mm-hmm.
I remember it was in 5th edition, somebody came up with it, and it was like the stat lines for like in lore Space Marines. So it was a 2,000 point 5-man squad of Space Marines. And it's like what? Yeah. So your full 2,000 point army is 5 Marines.
I don't
They
like
basically
that.
never miss anything ever, and yeah, I think they gave them armor plating.
What?
Like they gave them like armor facing to like account for their armor.
Good. I was just man. Oh wow. Oh, if Space Marines are ever real, we are all in so much trouble.
Yeah.
Oh,
Just
oh.
scary guys.
It's just like there's Voldemort said a video a long time ago. He talked about the Space Marine armor and the depiction of this thing bounding across the battlefield. And this is R2. There's regiments of men and women firing muskets and other high-powered rifles, and it's bouncing off, dinging. They fire cannons at this sucker. One shell from the cannon hits it and it goes down, and it stands back up and just keeps running. It runs through the line.
What did he say before? Getting charged by a Space Marine is like getting run over by a Kia Rio at 90 kilometers an hour.
Yeah.
And yeah, and Terminator is the same, but like an F-250.
Oh, I would not want to be in front of a charging Terminator. They're not supposed to be able to run, yet Space Marines can run in an armor. That's actually very scary.
Yeah, it absolutely is.
Yeah,
like I think Terminators are probably one of the worst depicted stat lines in the game.
I agree. There's like a long time ago, someone made a squad of 5 of them for a painting competition. They were on display, and I was blown away by them because I made the comment, these guys look like they're charging into the fight. And beside me it said, well, it doesn't make any sense. They're Terminators. They'd be too big. I was like, no, I think they could do it. Like, it's possible. It takes a minute, but if you get the momentum going, I'm sure the Terminator could be like hauling ass if you wanted to. Lo and behold, an audiobook comes out where it depicts a Terminator. It describes it. He's going, the movements were slow to begin with, but eventually went into a loping charge with the Terminator and slammed his fist into the alien, and it just evaporated in the mist.
I mean, it used to be Terminator armor was depicted as being similar to like a walking tank.
Yeah, really thick, heavy, you can't move that much.
But then also has a shield around it.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, like
probably
Terminators are meant to be scary.
Yeah, and heavy weapons platform, because when you really think about it, the combi bolter, they usually mount those on tanks. When you really think about it.
Yeah. I mean, even if you think of like in Marvel movies when they have like the Hulk charging, that's the like kinetic equivalent of a Terminator.
Yeah, that's scary.
Because then they also usually have like a power fist or something. So then they're moving at that speed. They weigh as much as they do, and they have something that has an energy field that amplifies like the kinetic and energy distribution of that charge. Like when a Terminator is charging and punches a human, like I'm pretty sure they just explode into mist.
Yes. Or if that's if you're lucky. If you're facing a Terminator that has a pair of lightning claws, you're gonna have a worse day.
It's more so, do you want to be soup, or do you want to be
sliced into multiple,
like skewered meat?
Yeah. Would you like to be sliced and packaged like maple leaf, basically?
Yeah. Do you want to be in the grocery store, or do you want to be in the soup pot?
Yeah.
Neither are good options.
No, neither.
No, and I honestly like it's partly why I actually like the Chaos Terminators better. Like the big tusks on them.
I love
anytime they're
tusks.
depicted in art is like so much, because like when they're running after you, like firing the whole time, and there's an animalisticness to them because of the tusks.
Yeah, exactly. The other ones, like it took me so long to realize this, but when you look at the Terminator's actual mask plate, I thought it used to be designed to be this long snouted like creature almost. But when I really looked at it again, I was like, wait a minute, it's a face. There actually is a little section here that comes down to look like a humanoid face. And I was like, I hate that. That's all I can see now. Yeah. But then when you look at the Chaos Marine Terminator, the tusks take that away and it becomes an animal again. It's like this.
But there is still the little like line
is there
that gives you the fate. But it's distended. It's lengthened.
It becomes lengthened down with the tusks. The face gets longer, and it goes from being humanoid more into bestial or bovine or some kind of creature that's chasing you. Like Terminator masks are scary. That's why I don't ever use Space Marine heads. I prefer the tusked helmets. They looked really, really scary.
Yeah, and
especially the big ones. Like the big long ones, and I wish the new one had this whole helmet, but they used to have one that was a rhinoceros where he had like just 2 rhino horns.
Oh, that'd be good.
I had a whole squad of 5 of them that all had the rhinoceros horns. I was like, yeah, this is my rhino squad, this is my mammoth squad.
I mean, I specifically always put the long tusks on all of them.
Yeah, the big, like, the huge ones. Yeah,
because there's kind of the little stumpy ones, and you're like, yeah, no.
I didn't like those ones. Like the ones that just curled up like this, I didn't like. But the ones that wrapped around like a pair of hooks, that was pretty cool.
Yeah. No, there's some good ones. They just really sell that, like, you know, because a Terminator is like the elite of the elite, and like they're meant to be like your most dedicated, you know, in chaos side. Like they are the veterans of the long war.
They should
and
look,
on the loyalist side, like they are hundreds of, you know, centuries old. Like Terminators are terrifying. Any last thoughts before we start wrapping up?
You know what? I'm going to put one shout out to the not just GW's art, but some of the other artists out there that create like fan-made art. In all honesty, sometimes the fan-made art for individual like heroes and characters is better than some of the stuff GW can put out. And it's like, there's one I've seen where it's a Corn Lord with an axe and a sword riding a Juggernaut with 3 heads like Cerberus facing down 2 space wolves. Ooh, it's nice.
You know what? That's a good point.
That's all I can say is like the fan-made art is just as good as GW's art, and if I were you as fans, I would indulge in every aspect of it because people make some really beautiful artwork when it comes to this hobby. And keeping that dark aesthetic.
Yeah, no, I think that's a good point, because really, like, you know, we talked a lot of kind of more so like the beginning of the art, but I think, yeah, I see so much art now that like has definitely pushed those boundaries and like created so many new and interesting ways of expressing Warhammer, and I think there's a lot of cool things the set. Like we've always kind of talked about, like, you know, Warhammer is kind of like, it's the glue that holds us all together, but there's so many different ways of expressing it that, yeah, the fan art is definitely, there's some cool stuff out there.
No, I agree.
On that note,
I totally agree. Yep. Yes. Is it time?
I want to thank you all for joining us. It is that time. It's time for us to go away. It's time for us to say goodbye. My kid's really into Bear in the Big Blue House right now, so we sing the goodbye song a lot.
Lovely.
Don't forget to subscribe to Chaos Divided wherever you're listening from, and you can find us on Instagram and YouTube at Chaos Divided 40K. If you're a fan of what we're doing and want to join our growing Wholesome Hammer community, you can find us at patreon.com/Chaos Divided 40K and support the show. And if you'd like to connect with us directly, we're at Team Blood God, at Nurgle_Snurgle, and at Blushing Noise Marine on Instagram and YouTube. And until next time, bye-bye.
Hit the jazz.